Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We're just gonna, this is John Gilmore here. We're just gonna take a few minutes and let everyone get logged into the system. People are coming on now, so I just wanted to, before we get started, just make sure everyone gets situated. So appreciate a few minutes of patience. We'll get going right about 1:01 or so that everyone's coming right in. Just going to give us like one more minute here and then we'll get started. So I'm going to get us started then. And first of all, welcome everyone to our webinar. Today is, I think, one of the hottest topics out there, which is data analytics and KPIs. And one of the things that I recommend to everyone when I'm prepping them for GC interviews is, these clients, the CEOs and boards and such, they really are looking for people that are mindful of process, and data analytics and KPIs are very, very much important. So when you're talking up your accomplishments and what you've been able to do for the law department, this is a great way to keep track and show the value that you're adding. So it's a really, really hot topic that I'm happy to introduce. We have today Audrey Rubin, was a great new add to our BarkerGilmore advisor team last year, specializing in legal operations. And then Haydee Olinger will introduce herself in a minute here, who was the chief compliance officer for McDonald's. We have two really good all-stars. One of the things that we're often told is the value that these webinars have is that you're actually talking to coaches and advisors that have sat in the seat doing the job versus someone that just learned by reading it in a book. So we're really happy to have this. BarkerGilmore, we do a monthly webinar, and again, it's all about helping people improve how they do their job and help position them better with the board and the CEO and the executive leadership team. So we're really, really pleased with today's the effort we're going to show you today, but also the general counsel and chief compliance officers that make up our total advisor team. Just a couple housekeeping. The webinar today will be recorded, and we will have some slides that'll show up on our website. It usually takes a few weeks, and we'll send out an email in advance letting you know when it is up and ready. So people, if you miss something or have to scoot off, we will have the program for you to review later. And then keep in mind our up and coming websites. It's again all going to have some really top tier guest hosts as well as our advisors. And so you can see we have the next three of them all set up and ready to go. So feel free to sign in and or visit our website at a later date and download. From a questioning standpoint, feel free to ask questions as we go along. If possible, the panelists will answer those questions. Otherwise, we'll get to the very end and answer those. So we're going to try to end the webinar about 10 minutes before the hour to get to some questions and then finish it up right on the hour. So with all that said, I'm going to introduce Audrey Rubin, who happens to be our legal operations expert and really, really terrific. And thank you, Audrey, for putting this on for us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, John. And thank you to everybody who's joining in. Yes, I am a senior advisor with BarkerGilmore. I concentrate on legal operations optimization, everything from financial optimization to technology to DE&I, helping you prove the value of your team. I'm a former general counsel, and more recently, I was vice president and chief operating officer of the Global Law and Compliance Department of Aon Corporation. I also teach at the University of Illinois College of Law. I teach law as a changing business. So we're lucky that the profession now realizes law is also a business in addition to being a profession. Thank you. Haydee?
Hi, thank you, Audrey, and welcome everyone. As John said, first of all, I'm Haydee Olinger, and as John said, I'm the former Global Chief Compliance Officer at McDonald's Corporation. I'm also on the board of directors of a publicly held company listed on the NASDAQ, And I am currently a senior advisor with BarkerGilmore, where I assist companies in GCs and compliance officers in assessing, maybe enhancing or structuring their compliance programs. And I also provide executive coaching. So welcome.
So this is kind of the elevator speech of what we're going to cover and hopefully achieve today. We're going to help understand how to identify and use your data that you already have, and you may not even know you have it, to prove your department's value in ways that are compelling to the business leaders, the finance department, and the board. Just practicing law and being great legal and compliance advisors is nice, but we need to prove our value in data as well. So that's kind of what we hope to achieve. So what exactly is data? Lawyers don't like to think of data. Compliance professionals don't like to think of data. We think that's for accountants, when in fact, data, if you've been to one of these seminars, you know that it's any factual information at all. It doesn't need to be numerical on its face. You could break down anything and turn it into data. You could break down things like how many turns you make in your car driving from your home to Starbucks. Nearly all activities, even services like ours, counseling and advice, have some element that can be viewed from the perspective of data. An example would be not only that you did a great contract and negotiated well, but the time spent in getting the contract signed, which is certainly important if you want to bring in revenue to your business fast. How many law firms provide services to your organization? What are the types of claims brought against the business? And then if you want to get more granular, you can even categorize them into types, situations. The business down in Houston generated more claims than any other of our offices. Why is that? Certainly, you should be counting, and we hope that you continue to grow the diversity and inclusion of your department. You could even, if you were tracking things such as efficiency or deliverables, start counting the number of emails on a particular point or topic or matter. This is data. Any factual information is data. Why is it important? Well, first of all, they're easy markers to tell your story. People like charts, they like pictures, and I don't mean 25-page PowerPoint graphs. I mean very easy numbers and numerical reports. They're ways to prove your value with numbers and empirically with charts. People prefer this. I'm sure it's easier for you to look at a bar graph than it is an Excel spreadsheet. That way you can visualize progress. You can see if there's room for improvement. You can track easily problem areas. Could be staffing, could be use of resources, could be any of the things we're talking about here. And you can see clearly where you're having an impact. And here's one of the main reasons that I really care about. The rest of the company, the rest of your firm, the rest of the businesses and the board of directors use numbers as their main tools. They look at finance, profit and loss, cash flow, headcount, number of sales, revenue, etc. And we in law and compliance need to be able to speak their language in order to be true business partners and be relevant. They appreciate that.
Next slide. One of the most important things I think in data is that it helps you allocate resources and manage your capacity in your legal department. As you know, in-house counsel are overworked And according to the Association of Corporate Counsel, the number of in-house counsel working more than 60 hours a week has risen by more than 50%. This information can help you direct resources to projects or works that may be cyclical in nature. You know, for example, at McDonald's, the real estate team was always overworked around September, because if construction didn't start on a new restaurant by September 30th, and by real estate team, I mean the real estate legal group, it would not be open by year end. And the number of openings per year was a target for the business. And for the real estate reps and construction representatives whose bonus could be affected by failure to open that required number of restaurants per year. Having data that supported this rush at year end for us helped us to justify to management the increase in expenses we always had around this time, especially when we had to hire contract attorneys and paralegals. I think it also helps you to identify work that should be automated. In a Find Law Corporate Counsel survey, nearly 1/2 of participants said they were too busy fighting fires to achieve any long-term goals. Well, I remember that, and I'm sure that happens to you all the time. So using data can help to determine what work can be simplified or automated. You know, things such as your non-disclosure agreements, or maybe some standard letters or procurement agreements, or maybe it can just help you to determine work that can be eliminated. And I think that is most critical. It also helps you to manage your budgets and allocate your costs. KPMG's Through the Looking Glass report compiled corporate leaders' opinions about general counsels and legal departments. And their summary provided, and I'm going to quote this, great GCs know what is happening within the business. They understand the strategic vision and the regulatory and legal climate. They can see the risks and opportunities around the corner. No one else on the board has this legal and business perspective. That's an outstanding statement. Obviously, you have the tremendous value within your organization, so you should use legal analytics to prove it. This, you know, as John said earlier, CEOs want a GC that can use data rather than anecdotes and hunches. This is a differentiator that will allow you to make well-informed proactive decisions. Even for those of you who are not GCs, using data analytics within your practice group can show your GC and your team that your work has some strategic objectives. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I used to do with the KPIs in my compliance team. It also helps you separate business as usual and project work. In any given year, you may have additional work due to maybe a new corporate project, an initiative, or a change in strategy. The coronavirus is a great example in a shift required by corporations and legal departments. Many GCs and attorneys are being called upon to help understand how the company can or should deal with this issue in regard to their employees, the customers, the suppliers, et cetera. If you have legal data supporting capacity and workloads, you can review it to determine where you might potentially shift internal resources to address these current business needs. Maybe your analytics are showing you that the attorneys working on your sales agreement, which you traditionally have characterized as business as usual work, have now slowed down because your corporate customers have been closed during this time frame. These attorneys, or are slowing down, I should say, these attorneys may have capacity to assist with more pressing projects right now, especially during an emergency or a shift in corporate priorities. And then, as Audrey mentioned, it gets you speaking the same language as your business and financial leads. All companies focus on numbers, so your CEO, CFO, and the board will appreciate your discussing your legal department in terms of numbers that impact the company's bottom line at some level. If you're able to show that, for example, your legal department handled 5 to 10% more contracts with the same number of staff, then your budgets may not be questioned in times of austerity. In the past, legal departments would hire outside counsel, or maybe they still do, because they went to school with a partner or associate without looking at the true, maybe economic basis for use of the firm. Keeping aside, the other obvious reasons for the choice of a particular law firm over another, at least with data analytics, you will be armed with facts that reflect why the use of that particular firm is the best choice for the company. Next slide.
I'm gonna, before we start this question, I'm gonna add on to something Haydee said, an example, because it triggered something in my brain. When I was the Chief Operating Officer of the Aon Global Law and Compliance Department, and And we started doing some data collection and analytics and reporting out some metrics on things such as why it was taking so long to get our law firm bills into the system and paid, which of course affected our budget, right? We need to know what is out there to pay. And things were going back and forth between us and certain law firms due to our guidelines and our e-billing system. When we were able to start tracking and we reduced the time it took to receive and turn an invoice by 60%, the finance department went crazy applauding us. Oh my goodness, our lawyers are actually looking at metrics. They're actually figuring out how to do things in a way that brings more certainty to our budgets. It was such a pat on the back for the law and compliance department in ways that you might not even anticipate. Okay, so we're gonna have a little poll here. And these are just some examples of things that you could prove about your department that you don't really think can be measured. So what would you like to prove about your department that you don't think can be measured? Here's your poll. Vendor savings, DE&I of your vendors, impact of the law department on contract life cycles. How do you prove that? Subpoena response efficacy, and how long it takes to pay law firm bills. Okay, 1 minute for everybody to vote. I think this is the wrong question.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Taylor, this is the wrong poll.
My apologies. Let me close that out. It jumped to the second.
For those of you who just saw that, you can, if you were thinking about it, you can vote the next time.
Here we go. Here's something that you'd like to prove but don't think can be measured. Are we getting some results, Taylor?
We are. I'm just going to leave it for about 10 more seconds.
Okay.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's interesting. Yes. Yes, very interesting. So, impact of the law department on contract life cycle is a big deal, as you know, because you want to get the contracts done, you want to get the revenue in the door, you want to get the deals done. But how can you prove what the law department contributed? Or, a lot of times the business says, well, I left the contract with the law department and I never heard back from them. Okay. This is a metric that could be very, very compelling, and certainly vendor savings is compelling. And hopefully by the end of today, you're going to have some tools to start doing that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, one of the most common complaints I think legal faces is that they move too slow in reviewing contract. The time that elapses between a legal team receiving the necessary information to begin the review of an agreement and then the creation of the first draft is a key indicator of inefficiency of legal operations. Certainly after that, the time that passes between the lawyer receiving the feedback and the input. I used to negotiate real estate contracts at McDonald's, and once we completed a draft and sent it to the real estate rep, it could take weeks before they provided the seller or landlord comments. Some of the reps would tell their managers that the legal department was holding up the agreements rather than face their boss with the fact that they had not forwarded the original draft to the other side. Once we started to keep actual data on our turnaround times through our matter management tool, The reps could no longer blame the legal department for the stall in negotiations. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, tracking, this is the quickest way to resolve a complaint. And frankly, I think Audrey's going to talk a little bit about this one here is a little bit, it is low hanging fruit that can be easily implemented and data that you can potentially, acquire easily as well. And while I'm at it, then I might as well talk a little bit about vendor savings, because that looks to be like the next one. And frankly, this could be one simple thing you could do, I think, is ensuring that you and your staff review the invoices you receive from your third-party vendors carefully. You want to ensure that the vendor is conforming to your billing requirements. It's an easy one, but people fail to do it because reviewing line items and hours billed can be more time consuming for in-house attorneys, but it's really necessary to catch any mistakes or overbilling. I used to find them, and people aren't doing them purposefully. It just happens because they're busy as well, or they inadvertently put a code in about which customer you were and that kind of thing. But certainly that's another one that you could easily quantify.
Yeah, and I've helped some of our BarkerGilmore clients analyze and achieve improved vendor savings by starting to measure what is being paid and where and with whom, and doing RFPs or fee negotiations with any vendor, a law firm or any other vendor. And then you can prove how much you saved. It's an actual dollar number, it's an actual percentage. And boy, does the C-suite like that. The impact of the law department on contract life cycles. I once did something, we actually looked at this at Aon, where we measured how many emails were coming in from the business on a particular type of contract. And we also measured each step of the contract life cycle, how long it took and where the contract was at that point. And it's so enlightening. We actually found out that this particular type of contract needed a wet signature from one of the heads of sales. And once we tracked it, we realized that it could sit in the inbox, the paper inbox of the head of sales for 3 to 5 days. Well, when we found that, we were able to change the procedure to save that much time on doing a contract. When you track the number of emails that came in from the business, and you realized it took the equivalent of like 8 hours just to respond to status emails, you can work on that and improve your efficacy and your value.
And to that point also, I know diversity, equity, and inclusion was another one. And one company that you might, if you're interested in, that does a good job, I think, of measuring this is Microsoft. I had read an article by a woman by the name, I think, Shiva McLaughlin, something like that. She mentioned that Microsoft only tracks outside counsel diversity, but holds outside not only tracks outside counsel diversity, but holds outside counsel accountable by rewarding and penalizing both law firms and individual lawyers based on their diversity inclusion, report card. The law firms earn a bonus by selecting from one of 5 specific and objective targets designated to measure the firm's diversity and inclusion. And then also some senior Microsoft corporate counsel's year-end bonuses are tied to diversity and success of its outside counsel. And real quick here, Audrey, I see that someone's asking a question about benchmarking. As it turns out, I was going to talk about benchmarking in a couple of slides, but I might as well address it now. Using benchmarking can help when measuring your law department spend as a percentage of company revenue. Items such as, your internal spend on legal matters, external spend on legal matters, and maybe even a combined internal external spend. These metrics can be used to benchmark your law department's performance against other companies. You can get this information from trade publications or trade associations. This information can also help to in support of requests for additional headcount. If you work with if you typically benchmark other legal departments, they might be able to help you with that information as well. There's sometimes people say there's, issues with giving out information, but, you can keep it neutral. Anyway, next slide.
We also had a question from a couple of attendees on
Okay.
how to do this data collection without, compromising your day job, that it takes long. And the answer to that in general is a lot of this data exists already in your existing systems. You just have to figure out how to pull it. Some of it does not, and some of it has to be done through process mapping, which, I do with my clients. But some of it already exists, or you can get it pretty easily. For example, the diversity of your vendors should be part of what you ask them to report on, whether it be through the RFP or in their annual report cards. Figuring out the turn time or the wins and losses of certain claims, or where certain claims are originating, while bearing in mind that not all claims are the same, can be done in a variety of ways that you may have already. You may already know litigation in Dallas for slip and falls. And if you don't know it, you can track that relatively easily with a little bit of extra layering on to your already existing matter management systems or your outside law firm fees, just by coding things in a different way. You can also do, there are other approaches such as sampling. So it can be done. And a lot of this data exists already. You just have to remember to generate the right reports to find it. Okay, so where do you start? Where do you start? Well, you have to determine what you want to measure, of course. We recommend starting with the low-hanging fruit and pain points because you can feel good, kind of right away. And non-sophisticated approaches are fine. We just sort of talked about this. Doing some process mapping with the group, 8 people, let's say, in your company of cross-functional people, lawyers, paraprofessionals, maybe somebody from finance, maybe somebody, a paralegal, whatever. And you can start mapping how long it takes to do a certain kind of contract just by starting to keep time for a month, timesheets for a month or 2. They don't have to be fabulously detailed, just some timesheets for a month or 2, and then doing some process mapping with this data. So it actually, non-sophisticated approaches are fine. Realizing that a bill came in and it took 4 months before you could get the law firm's bill into the system because there were so many errors, that's in your time and billing system already. Haydee?
Yeah, so interesting. I know that people are wondering, okay, how do you start this whole thing? Well, frankly, you have to have a plan. You have to decide, maybe you even hire somebody or put somebody in your group who likes to do this type of things as the lead person to help you start to gather. But you have to decide what data should we be gathering? And it shouldn't just be to gather, it should have some purpose. You should want to do something with that information that you have acquired. Either change something, remove work, or determine how best to just push things out to someone else. I'm going to talk a little bit about mapping on the next one because I'm going to show you a map of one of my clients uses on a process mapping. And certainly that I think is very important. A nice visual, as you'll see. Generating easy reports can help you identify things such as which business units send you the most legal matters and what percentage of work is spent on non-strategic matters. The goal certainly of collecting data is to ensure that the legal department is focused most of the time on the strategic part of the business, because that's what you can show your business, the value that you are bringing to the company. You can use these reports to help you diagnose your problem and maybe even help work out solution. As business people love charts and graphs, so translating the data into a graph can show how or why the legal department spends its time. Set time schedule and track it regularly. Like everything else, continuous improvement of your data and processes is important. And finally, there's no use in gathering data, as I said earlier, unless you're using it to increase your productivity. Maybe you cut your costs and add value. On the next slide, here's an example of a great way to map your work and use it to effectuate change within your legal department. One of my BarkerGilmore clients uses this chart to help them in their legal department analytics. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can manage the process in-house. It takes time and a dedication, but you can do it. But this client of mine had chosen to hire this independent company, and it's called Zakia. And this company helped them put together their processes on this map. And as this chart showed at the end, their goal was to focus on strategic value of the legal department. So once you plot your data, you will be able to determine what you should do less of because it has low complexity and maybe low strategic value. So maybe you outsource it, you automate it, maybe it's repetitive work, you automate it, you eliminate it, or maybe you assign a paralegal or someone else to manage it. In the low strategic value but complex quadrant you'll see here, you may want to do the work differently. Assess the risks associated with this work and determine how to prioritize it and allocate different resources. All of this will allow you to focus your legal department's resources where you want it, on the high strategic value projects that are either less complex or highly complex. This chart may help during budget time. You can show the CFO and CEO that you've determined the highest and best use of your team. And then you can potentially shift or request additional resources as needed to focus on those high strategic value areas. Audrey?
Yeah, those are great examples. I personally love swim lane charts, just so if you haven't done a lot of process improvement work, let me explain what a swim lane chart is. It basically shows handoffs in the cycle of anything. And as we all know, the more handoffs, the more room for error and the more delay. So when you can process map something like, who's taking care of the drafting and the signing of a contract, or how many people are involved, it's fun to then reduce the time and improve the efficiency. When it comes to cost savings, you don't even probably need to map. I mean, that's pretty easy one to start. You look at your costs and you figure out ways to reduce them and you prove that you've done that. And there are many ways to reduce costs, whether it be reallocation of resources, going to lower cost locations. We do that a lot. RFPs to law firms and other vendors. So, getting global fees rather than ad hoc fees in different cities from the same vendor. There are many ways to do that, and you can then prove them pretty readily. Okay, next slide. So now we're into KPIs. So, KPIs is an acronym used a lot. Not everybody actually knows what it means. It means key performance indicator. Okay, key performance indicators. And the companies like to use these because, in fact, they're tracking performance, no matter what business you're in. So they're the major goals of the company. And the law and compliance departments can start tracking KPIs of their own, or those that roll up to and support the KPIs of the company. This is where reports and metrics really make a difference, because you can show that you're supporting the KPIs, the key performance indicators of the business.
Yes.
Go ahead, Haydee.
Yeah, Actually, I think you already have, a lot of companies already have key performance indicators. So if you have them, you can already use them to assess your staff and determine your capacity. Some of my clients use cost per matter per lawyer, and they perform a budget to actual total spend comparison. Another great measure of KPIs or KPIs is the law department spend as a percentage of the company revenue. Again, the business wants to know how funds are being spent by the various corporate departments. This number may help to further show how efficient the legal department is running. And then we talked about the benchmarking. Again, I think that was a great question because I still think I used to benchmark my compliance program against other companies similarly, and obviously it can be the same industry, the same revenue size or similar structure, whatever. But I think that's useful information. It helps you also to feel good about where you're at sometimes, to say, well, yes, I just talked to this company and it's similar to us and they're in the same boat we are. So I strongly recommend benchmarking in all areas, but in this area, I think it's important to do so. On the next slide, okay, so evaluating, so what can be tracked with data? One of the things that a lot of my clients want to do is they want to evaluate their outside counsel's performance. And they like to use data. The information can help you in your annual review and discussion with outside counsel, and hopefully you're having those annual reviews. Facts are harder to argue, and a GC or any lawyer who reviews or approves bills, armed with this type of data, such as either the timeliness of delivery of work product, an analysis of actual spend to budget, cycle matter times, and frankly, the rest of the things you see on this list can ease negotiations, fee negotiations, frankly, with your outside counsels for the coming year. Measuring actual matter outcomes against estimated recoveries for litigation matters is an interesting one. The law firm of Gibson and Dunn, we used to use them, they put together a great article on case assessment and evaluation for defense counsel through practicallaw.com. It's a good article that might help in-house counsel ask questions in the development of a case strategy when estimating recoveries for litigation matter. You might also want to track matter cycle time. Are matters being delayed by outside counsel as opposed to your internal tracking of matter? Who's causing the delay? Your internal business partners, your legal department, or is it in fact your outside counsel? And of course, I think a lot of legal departments already review the number of law firms used. Achieving economies of scale is the most important thing here. And of course, every year we used to see which law firms did we how much do we pay the various law firms that we use on an annual basis. That helped us determine if we needed to maybe offer some alternative fee arrangements. Again, that could be a good negotiating tool with other law firms. And another thing we did was conduct a survey of in-house counsel, our legal assistants, our business clients, just to assess the law firm performance. I know sometimes people say, well, the business is not a good judge of it, but they can give you good information on the rate of responsiveness, maybe the frequency of the matter updates. Of course, your attorneys can determine on the quality of the work product. You should also measure the source of legal spend by business units. Some departments, and maybe even individuals in some departments, are heavy users of your services. And these are the ones you need to analyze. What type of work are they requesting? Is it something they can easily do without attorney initial input, or are they passing it off to the legal department because it's just easier to do so? The GC can then use this information to sit down with the department head to come up with a solution on allocating resources. Audrey?
Thank you. So we have a few questions that have come in. If you don't mind, I think we're going to touch on some of the answers, but I'd also like to wait until the end if you don't mind.
Sure.
They have to do with identifying KPIs to prove strategic value, what some might call the in-house counseling skills, how to develop metrics to assess those, how to prove your value compared to outside counsel. I think we're going to talk about some of those later, but I will get to them if possible.
And I see also that someone's asking a question about compliance department metrics. I'm going to be speaking about that. So thank you for the question. That is definitely one of our slides.
We'll get in a minute, folks. Okay. So let's go to another kind of survey here. You kind of saw it before when we accidentally put it up, but so let's poll. What would you like to prove that you don't know how to prove or show? How you met your budget, why you went over budget, why you need more staff, which areas are using a disproportionately high amount of your services so that maybe some business line is draining your resources. So what would you like to prove of these that you don't know how to prove? We'll give you a minute. Aha, that's what I would have expected, but I wasn't sure. Why I need more staff. Yeah, those are metrics that would be very important. There are a multiple of ways to demonstrate that. They involve identifying what your roles do, what your staff does, right? And they involve starting to focus in on certain tasks that they're doing, and also certain demands that are being made on them. There are multiple ways to collect this information. It starts, of course, with, the responsibilities, roles and responsibilities org chart. Then you can go into what such and such a group or such and such an office is costing compared to another office. This is the kind of question that is really critical nowadays and yet extremely doable. This is very, very doable. But you do have to take a little bit of time analyzing what your staff does now, where they are, what they cost, who's asking them for what kind of counsel, and then taking a look at it as a leader and figuring out if adjustments can be made, and if not, what to do about getting more resources. Let me give you an example. You can prove that your New York office, for the same type and amount of talent, costs more than your Phoenix office for the same amount of type and talent. You know right away that you might not want to add more people in New York. You might rather add them in Phoenix. But if you can bring in some data from the business people who are asking the New York office for assistance, some of this might be time tracking, some of it might be feedback sessions. And then you can analyze whether that work could be done in the Phoenix office or whether some of it could be done in the Phoenix office. You can prove I need this done because we need this staff because the New York office is requiring it. The New York business is requiring it. New York business has a new business idea. They need this staff in New York. But you can prove the value of your staff to the revenue being brought in or the risk being reduced by having the staff in-house, or maybe you need more staff, but they don't need to be at the level. So there are a number of ways of proving this, but it absolutely can be measured, tracked, and proven. That's why I put it here. That's why we put it on the list, because it's doable. The reasons why I went over budget, you can track that. What was your budget? Where did you spend more? Why did, what matters or what areas, and what time to reduce that spend. All of this is all of these are KPIs that can be measured. Haydee?
No, that's fine. I mean, I think you've responded to those.
Okay, so let's move on.
Yeah.
So consulting, let me talk, I think we're on the next slide. Okay, here are some examples of ways in which Haydee and I and others at BarkerGilmore are helping our clients develop and measure their KPIs and their metrics. And these examples are things like, we're helping people figure out the best use of their talent to avoid having to hire and staying within budget, how to reduce costs. We're helping our clients generate reports of metrics that roll up to the company's KPIs. For example, many companies nowadays have DE&I goals. The law department can develop goals that support that, such as a goal to hire diverse talent only in certain jurisdictions, or at least to have finalist panels that are 50% diverse in certain jurisdictions. You can have a goal to have 10% of your law firms put diverse members on the teams working on your matters. These all roll up to the KPIs of the company. And we can help you, and we do help our clients figure this out. I love helping transitioning work to lower cost locations. And by the way, that doesn't have to mean offshore if you don't want it to. It can be lower cost area in the United States. We help our clients improve their technology and systems to be more valuable, to be more efficient, to reduce risk. One of the questions we got in was about risk reduction. How do we do that? Well, there are different ways to measure risk. One of them is the number of handoffs in a process. One of them is the amount of money you're spending on a certain kind of claim or defending. And then you can adopt new practices to reduce that risk. Another one that is really nice is to look at things such as your mergers and acquisitions portfolio and start tracking how due diligence is done, not only in time, but time, expense, who's doing what's outside counsel doing, what are you doing, and reducing the number of gaps and delays. Gaps always result in risk. So the less gaps there are in the process, you are reducing risk. There are many ways to prove this, depends on the risks you're trying to reduce, but literally any risk, risk reduction can be measured. If you're looking at it, if you're focusing in on it and seeing it through the right lens. We've already talked about diversity metrics. We help our clients with strategic planning. That's a big one, of course. With team building, all of these are ways in which we're making some inroads to help you be the best you can be and the most valued you can be.
So I want to focus on the effective compliance programs. Because I used to use these in my practice, and I think every good compliance department should have some of these KPIs for their compliance program. They're used to help evaluate your own compliance group, but also I think it helps to quantify the team's work when speaking with your general counsel and even speaking to the board. Frankly, each practice group within a legal department can establish their own KPIs. But for example, some of the quantitative data for compliance programs or qualitative may include, the first one I have here, I think is very critical, the number of internal investigations completed within the required time frame. Time and again, you see lawsuits being filed because someone filed a complaint with an internal source and nothing was done or the investigation dragged. A recent article in the Chicago Tribune, in fact, it was just last week, dealt with a lawsuit a young cheerleader on the Northwestern University squad filed against Northwestern and her coach for failing to respond to a hostile environment complaint she made to the Title IX office at the school. Her allegation is that they required her to attend football tailgate parties and donor events in her cheerleading outfit, where she was groped and subjected to sexually charged comments. This KPI is critical to maintaining the integrity of your compliance investigation process, and it can help prevent lawsuits. And it's an easy one to track. You know when the complaint or the whistleblower concern came in, and then you know when you completed the investigation, and you can put your own metrics in, knowing how complicated or whether a particular claim is complicated or not. You can decide how long you think that one should take, especially depending upon the number of people you have to interview. I used to also have percentage of timely completions of all employee trainings. And as I said earlier, don't have a KPI just to have one. You have to have something that's going to get you to make some change or do something different. This KPI allowed us to determine how committed our employees were to the compliance program. If employees aren't completing the training, maybe you need to determine why this is happening. Is it lack of management support? Is it boring training? That doesn't happen. Is there failure to fully understand why training is important? Again, this information might help you to reassess your program. A pulse survey, we used to put this on our annual employee surveys. We had ethical questions in there, ethical culture questions. And this KPI helped us to determine if there were areas or business units in the company that needed further communication or training on our compliance and ethics efforts. I used to always wanted to make sure that our new hires were trained within a specified time frame. How effective is the compliance team at ensuring new hires understand the values and the code of conduct of the company? You really want to get an employee understanding this immediately when they come in. And cascading training to specific job levels. How good were we at training that's targeted where needed, such as maybe an antitrust training to sales personnel? These are just a few examples. There are many more KPIs you can use in your compliance program. And this is the kind of stuff that I've helped our Barker clients, look for when they're reviewing their programs. So on the next slide, when BarkerGilmore, as I think John mentioned at the beginning, when we're conducting a GC search, we found that the best-in-class GCs and CCOs are the ones who can show that they can and will make a demonstrable impact on the company if they're hired. They show this by speaking the CEO, CFO, and board's business and financial language, as we talked about earlier. And one way a GC or potential GC or compliance officer can differentiate themselves is by using metrics and data to show how you can effectuate change, either real qualitative and quantitative change in your organization.
Yeah, all of that is correct, Haydee. And the other thing that we can help you do is to show, you will be showing initiative to the company. If you're reporting on your meeting budgets, how to meet your budgets, how to meet your staffing targets with real data, with real numbers. We can help coordinate your technology with company systems. This is a big one. A lot of times law and compliance departments operate their own billing systems, their own matter management systems, their own purchasing rules, how they buy law firm services and so forth. We spend some time with our clients integrating the legal systems into the systems of the rest of the company, which really makes the rest of the company feel good. And it's more beneficial to the law department too. Technology systems, where are the contracts sitting? Can you use artificial intelligence to get some of these contracts done? When you coordinate with the rest of the company, you are really ahead of the game. And we help you spot trends, reduce risks, do benchmarking with your peers. And we love to see you progress and help you. Anything else to add, Haydee?
Just real quick. I'm going to add real quick. Again, this is a a complex topic that we've tried to squeeze in 1 hour, and trying to give you as much information as we can. And again, these things are just some points. There are many more. But one thing we've learned in our search is that most effective GCs are those that take an executive role approach to their role. The use of these strategic data and analytics to accomplish this is imperative to making informed, factual decisions and recommendations that can impact your corporate strategy, risk mitigation, and resource allocation. And I thank you for your time. I think we have some questions we want to look into. Audrey, if you want to take that from here.
Yes, or you can ask some new ones. John, do you want to lead the Q&A?
There's quite a number of questions here. We can do it here.
Yeah, there's quite a number. If you want to just pick out one or two that you think are great, we only have a few minutes before we need to close up.
Oh, yes. Okay.
One of the questions that has come in is how to help benchmark things within your department that you want to prove. It could be the number of people you have in different roles compared to your peers. It could be how do you benchmark the amount of money you spend on certain activities compared to your peers in order to prove your value. That's a really good question. And this is kind of a two-pronged answer from my perspective. If you're trying to benchmark against outside companies, other companies, you can either pick up surveys such as the ones that BarkerGilmore has online and distributes about a lot of data. And if for some reason some of the data in the report is not what you're looking for, we can help you develop a list of questions that you want to benchmark, and then literally reach out to your peers with very careful limitations for antitrust reasons and so forth. But you can say to a peer, a competitor, I just want to benchmark a few things here. We're going to be very careful. We're not benchmarking fees or anything like that. But would you and 4 others in our group like to share benchmarking information about such and such a topic? I don't know how many paralegals you have for the compliance department or something like that that isn't anti-competitive. I've done that, and it can be helpful. That was one of the questions.
I actually just jump in. One question that that people have often asked me is how do they benchmark, or how, from a metric standpoint, how do we evaluate how the advisors bring value to the engagements that they've had? And we have a great answer to that. One is following every engagement, we do a customer satisfaction survey. And both Haydee and Audrey have a 5 out of 5 in all of the category questions that we ask. So it's pretty impressive that they maintain that high level of satisfaction. But I think something that's even more important to show the value is that after every engagement is completed, they have always been asked to renew and do more for the company. So the companies are certainly seeing value being brought to them. And again, as I mentioned up front, a GC that has very specific, they are metric driven and they have specific processes for maintaining these KPIs, can go in and speak at a much higher level to the CEO and the CHRO and the board. And I can just tell you, it's a much more impressive presentation and typically will lead to a lot of excitement in your candidacy. If you can do so. So if you aren't doing it today, I highly recommend that you take advantage and do this. And I do apologize that we are running out of time. We only have a few minutes left, and I know people have other meetings to attend. So I'll just say that, again, we are metrics driven. You'll receive a survey following this to actually give these guys a score for the value that they were able to bring you today. Hopefully you just take a minute and just fill that survey out. Again, keeping in mind, you will receive a note that will outline when this is up on our website and how you can visit that. And then lastly, keep in mind the future websites will have different speakers and different guests on them that can bring a lot of value. And we certainly do appreciate it. And If anyone's interested in talking about GC succession or GC search, or even looking for a strategic hire on your team, we're always happy to have those conversations. So whether it's for you personally looking for something new, or your organization looking to make a strategic hire, we're really happy to assist. So thank you again for joining us, and definitely thank you to Audrey and Haydee. You guys are the best. And if anyone has a specific question, feel free to reach out to both of them. Their email addresses are here, and they're also on our website. So thanks again, and have a great day, and stay well.